The Tour de France began in England this year, allowing the French to export their great cultural traditions of public urination and flying helicopters over ruined vestiges of feudalism. As soon as the flag dropped, 3 riders hid out, 2 from French wildcards and the other being Trek's Jens Vogt. Understandably, the peloton was like, yeah, seems good to us. Jens dropped his companions through a point sprint at 113k to go because Jens, and found his way through a sea of fans to take 2 KOMs before a committee chase of Cannondale and Lotto Belisol brought him to heel at 59k to go. The constantly rolling terrain caused a few nervous moments, gapping groups off the back, while at the final kilometer, Trek's Fabian Cancellara made it interesting, but it would come down to a sprint. Around 300 meters to go, Giant Shimano's leadout begins to run out of steam. Cannondale's Peter Sagan launches around them at 250 meters, and Orica Greenedge's Simon Gerrans and Omega Pharma Quickstep's Mark Cavendish both go for his wheel. Cav tries to open some space with his head, which is mostly legal, but he's too far behind the Australian and ends up wedging his handlebars into the back of Gerrans, taking them both down and taking himself out of the race. Europcar's Brian Coquard does a great job bouncing off the carnage to get back to the wheel of Giant Shimano's Marcel Kittel, but the full-flight German had no equals, taking the stage with ample time to celebrate. Stage 2 had a lot of climbs, and maybe it's time for Giant Shimano to step up their GPS budget, yeah? It was a bit moot as Kittel was dropped at 60k to go on the whole Moss climb just before the break was caught, though early escapee Cyril Lemoine of Cofidis could at least console himself with the mountain points lead. The day rapidly developed into a race of attrition, aided in no small part by steadily increasing tempo from Garmin, Astana, and Sky. Europcar's Pierre Roland took a brief flyer over the penultimate climb, but the real GC favorites came out 10k later, with Tinkoff Saxo's Alberto Contador and Sky's Chris Froome trading attacks to thin the pack to a mere 20. A few probing attacks flew, including some from Astana's Jakob Fuglsang, but just inside 2k to go, the real move came from teammate Vincenzo Nibali. It touched off an immediate discussion in the group about how exactly they planned to lose the stage. They did eventually mass for a sprint as Froome came to the front to limit the time gap, but the Italian champion's 2 seconds on the line were enough to take over the race lead. It's tempting to view Stage 3's profile as an apology to the sprinters after all that, although their day was made a bit harder by the presence of breakaway tank Jan Barta of NetApp and an over-eager spectator or two. Lotto began to whip up the pace in earnest at 24k to go. A host of others contributed, and despite a light drizzle and relatively twisty run-in, Barta was finally brought back with 6k to go. Giant Shimano really dominated this lead-out. Lotto tried to challenge but met up with more spectators, and then seemed to lose Greipel for a moment before the German champ ended up pinched on the inside of a corner right before the final K. But even if Greipel had kept position, it's hard to imagine he'd have had better luck than Sagan or OPQS's Mark Renshaw in coming around Kittel at the line. Stage 4, back in France, and moments after Europcar's Thomas Voeckler and Cofidis' Luis Maté established a break, literally 4k into the race, Froome was caught up in a packed tumble. Nothing too bad, it seemed, though more work than he'd wanted to do on that flat day. The race apparently went by Cofidis Company HQ, so the GoPro was out, but the tech budget might have been better spent as Maté lost his chain just before a point sprint and then had a front flat some 20k later, leaving Voeckler out on his own. Lotto's misfortune continued, with veteran Greg Henderson taking himself out of the race by sliding out on a corner at 28k to go. Garmin and Tinkoff brought Voeckler back at 16k to go, but it was Omega Pharma who set the lead-out tone, at least until the final 2 kilometers when a fragmented Giant Shimano train came to the front and chaos took over. Helped in part by a questionably legal push under the red kite, it was Katusha leading in the closing meters. Alexander Kristoff launched a long way out, and with a slight gap, Renshaw held off, hoping Kittel would come around to close it. The Giant Shimano rider did, but it also left Renshaw with no way around Kristoff. With 50 to go, the Norwegian still had the lead but paid for his early efforts in the closing meters, missing out to Kittel by just half a wheel. I'm Cosmo Catalano, and that's how the race was won.
Can you guys help me pick a filter? I don't know if I should go with XX Pro or Valencia. I want to look tan. What should my caption be? I want it to be clever. How about living with my bitches, #live. I only got 10 likes in the last 5 minutes. Do you think I should take it down? Let me take another selfie.